If you were asked to name the most iconic air-cooled Porsche, you'd probably name the Porsche 993 Turbo. Its ever-increasing price tag is testimony to just how amazing it is, which keeps it very relevant and highly revered amongst car enthusiasts. So what is the Porsche 993 Turbo? Why was it so spectacular? How much potential is there for tuning? What are the weak links or barriers you'll run into when you own and ultimately tune yours? We'll go over these questions and much more in this video. If you're enjoying this content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What is the Porsche 993 Turbo and why was it so spectacular? The 993 Turbo arrived on the scene a year after the Carrera in 1995, with Porsche exclusives producing a limited production run of 14 units, and that arrival definitely came with a bang. The body style, although still 911 in silhouette, was unlike any previous Porsche 911, with its bulging rear flares merging all the way to the rear of the door and back into the taillight area. The front flares were similarly designed, giving the car the design that would carry forward to what you would see today on Porsche's showroom floor. Even the rear wing had much improved aero. The engine is 3.6 liters with a 76.4mm stroke and a 100mm bore, 2 valves per cylinder, and a single-plug distributor-type ignition system. The Carrera had the benefit of twin-plug, but due to the proximity of the turbos, Porsche decided against it. On the 993 Turbo, though, this is also one of the first Porsche turbos that had very nice cylinder head porting and intake manifold, versus the super tiny ports on any of the 930 and 964 turbos. It's boosted by a pair of K16s on the standard turbo, while the S and X50s have a pair of K24s to bring the power up to an even higher level. This was all cooled by a massive intercooler, taking up most of the rear wing area to take advantage of the cooling provided by the new aerodynamics. The 993 Turbo was welcomed to the new era of engine management with the Motronic's 5.2 DME, which is a huge upgrade from the former CIS system on the 964 Turbo. The Bosch DME gave the 993 Turbo full sequential injection, closed-loop lambda control, knock sensing, and boost control, all integrated into the DME. This all made for a powerful and reliable sports car ready to take on the world. Even the rear suspension was revolutionary on the 993 Turbo, and you'll see a very similar design all the way up through the newest turbos in Porsche's lineup. Previous years still had the trailing arm type suspension carried forwards from the earliest Porsche models, while the 993 Carrera and Turbo were gifted with the new 5-link Weissach rear suspension. This had the advantages of tow control under braking and acceleration, as well as greatly improved camber control under all conditions. The handling and road feel is revolutionary compared to previous models. What are some common problems with the Porsche 993 Turbo? As amazing as it was, even the Porsche 993 Turbo had its issues. So before we get into tuning these, let's go over some common problems you should anticipate with basic ownership. Oil leaks. The 993 Turbo, like many high-performance cars, can be prone to oil leaks. Common culprits are the magnesium camchain housings and covers and plastic valve covers. The turbo sump tanks tend to seep a bit as well. Simply putting oil in these can look like an oil leak, since you need to extend the accordion filler neck up beyond the intercooler to get an oil can into it, and the long path from the neck to the tank makes this a very slow fill, tending to overflow down onto the engine tin and exhaust, making for some nasty oil smell and smoke. Turbocharger issues. Oil smoke on the startup from the turbos can be embarrassing and annoying. The buildup in the compressor housing and intercooler can cause a lot of carbon buildup in the combustion chamber, as well as knock and engine damage. This can be cured with P-trap return lines, 996 turbo check valves on the pressure side, and the new Porsche updated oil tank to engine case valve taken from the 996 Turbo as well. Electrical issues. The 993 Turbo, like any car with a complex electrical system, can experience electrical problems with various components like windows, seats, or even the instrument cluster. The info display in the tachometer is commonly failing or dim due to blown bulbs, while the electronic display itself is prone to circuit board failures. The AC and heating controller is so prone to failure that Specialized ECU has developed a very nice modern update for them that still talks to the factory diagnostic tools. The engine wiring harnesses have hopefully all been replaced by now. Porsche and a few other German car manufacturers thought it was a great idea to install biodegradable engine wiring harness coatings, while they never made it to the junkyards, but instead failed quickly in the cars, with the coatings coming off, causing all kinds of havoc, from simple flickering gauges to full-on engine fires. The DME Relay. Furthering the electrical issues, the DME relay is prone to failing on these cars. It's an interesting relay with multiple functions of triggering the DME and the fuel pump, with 2 relays and 1 taller than normal single relay. Keep one in your glove box, so when it fails, you have a backup. We've rewired cars to split the function of this relay out and improve the reliability of the system. It's a nice update and something you should consider. Oil cooler resistor. The oil cooler has a 2-speed fan relying on a resistor for the low-speed function. This resistor is mounted in the front right on the inner wall just below the headlight. They tend to fail, and you lose the low-speed function of the fan, which can cause the engine to run quite a bit hotter than they should. Then suddenly, at very high temperatures, the fan will come on in full speed. If this sounds familiar, your oil cooler resistor may be blown out. These can be replaced, but also relocated to keep them from running too hot and burning up. There's a nice write-up in Renlist's forums for doing this. We'll put a link in the description for you. Immobilizer troubles. As with all of the early Immobilizer cars, the 993 turbos are not immune and have encountered issues with the Immobilizer system, which can prevent the car from starting. The key fob battery contacts to the PC boards are riveted and lose contact. The immobilizers themselves are prone to water damage, since they're on the floor pan of the car, under the seat, and leaving the windows down or even opening the doors during a downpour can take your alarm and immobilizer out. We can bypass this into DME when tuning your car though, so be sure to request that feature so you're not stranded. What are the weak links or barriers you'll run into when you own and eventually tune one? As you're tuning your 993 Turbo, you'll run into a few barriers. Since we've already listed some of the common issues, let's jump right in with some mods and see how far each can take us. With the base horsepower of the 993 Turbo coming in at 408 horsepower at the crank, you could follow the factory path of the X50 and GT2 with a pair of K24s and a DME upgrade to bring the power up to 424 horsepower or later 1998 spec of 444 horsepower. While this would be a nice factory-ish upgrade, I'm sure you're here because there's a lot more than that left on the table. Tuning. A simple DME reflash on the 993 Turbo can bring the crank horsepower up in the 460 to 480 horsepower range, depending on your fuel quality. As the 993 Turbo tends to be quite sensitive to fuel quality, you'll also want to run the highest octane available for the best power and reliability. If good fuel isn't available, you may want to keep some octane boost or find a station with some 100 and mix a few gallons in to be sure your best friend and investment is always fed well and protected from the damage that can happen from poor fuel. You may have been told your ECU is not flashable if you have an early 993 Turbo, but that's not the case. Well, kind of. The early DMEs came with an OTP or one-time programmable Intel 87BC6QG chip, which serves as memory and has many other functions as well, while the later 1997 DMEs had a Siemens STMCC460 chip that had all the same functionality but was now reprogrammable. For the early DMEs, we install a Daughterboard that offloads the memory into 2 smaller chips that are reprogrammable. And on some cars, we've even taken that to be an advantage, since the 2 smaller chips have 4 times the memory range, and by installing a few switches, we're able to access the different memory regions and provide up to 4 programs in the early DME. It's no small feat and makes my eyes go wonky when doing these, but does make for a fun upgrade if you're considering multiple tunes for different fuels, or a street setup combined with a race setup, etc. So not only should you not be afraid of the early DME, but sometimes it has advantages over the highly sought-after late-model flashable DME. Ignition system. Even at this level of performance, you'll want to be sure you have good spark plugs and a well-maintained ignition system. A single-strap dual platinum spark plug can work considerably better than the OEM plug. We've run the Denso PK20 PR-P8 as well as the Bosch FR6 DPP332 in these with great results. The OEM caps, rotors, and plug wires work well when new. And as long as your clutch is in good shape, it'll handle the power upgrade without breaking a sweat. Turbos. Why only 480 horsepower with a DME flash? Well, this runs into our first barrier, which would be the turbos. If you still have the stock K16s on there, they have little 25-pound compressors on them, which are good for a theoretical maximum horsepower around 500 if you could pull a 10-to-1 brake-specific air consumption. But we've found these to not be quite as efficient as the modern-day 4-valve water-cooled engines, so the stock turbos on a Porsche 993 Turbo tend to max out in the 460 to 480 horsepower range. There's plenty of turbine flow there, but the compressors simply run out of breath, and trying to run more boost will just peak the boost early while dropping it at higher RPM as the airflow demand increases. So to get beyond this barrier, let's throw a set of our K1665 G2 upgrades on, which have some super efficient, lightweight billet wheels that are capable of low to mid 600 horsepower levels. But as you've probably guessed already, turbos aren't the only barrier you'll run into.